He came to America for a better life, for himself as well as his family. He moved into an affluent neighborhood, a gated community where he felt safe, and that dream fell short.
They stabbed him to death. He's bleeding.
Who stabbed him?
It was the shock of my life seeing somebody who is so kind being murdered. Who could have done it?
Crime scene detectives were able to get a foreign DNA hit. Unfortunately, the technology just wasn't available at that time. Fast forward, now you have DNA companies that have these huge databases.
Suddenly, the match is irrevocably made.
So kind of going down memory lane a little bit, anything jarring you why we would be talking to you from Jacksonville still?
No.
Obviously, you're accusing me of something. Get all the formalities, because I know what my rights are.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth when you learn that one of your own is capable of doing something like this. He needed her help, and she didn't want to disappoint him. At the end of the day, it was her choice either to go or not go. She chose to go.
On May 17, 1999, dispatchers in Jacksonville, Florida, receive a panicked call from the affluent Deerwood residential community.
Jacksonville 911, Cal.
Please, do what the time at the door. Please, do what.
Okay, ma'am, listen, you got to calm down for us to get you some help. First of all, do you need police or do you need rescue?
Police, they stole all our money.
It was a very frantic call. They had some difficulty understanding her, but they were able to establish that they were the victim of what appeared to be a home invasion robbery, and her husband was assaulted.
They stabbed him to death. He's bleeding.
Who stabbed him?
Somebody, I don't know. His woman and red, they came and he was leaving the house with his red. They stopped him and let him inside the house. And for fast to beat them all out.
Let me ask you this. The person who stabbed him, is he gone?
Yes, they left.
They immediately sent patrol officers to the scene.
When officers arrive at the residence, they find the caller, Summer Kawaf, tending to her 39-year-old husband, Saad, inside the garage.
He was in critical condition at that point, with severe stab wounds all over his body.
He was life-flighted as our medical air ambulance service here to what was then University Medical Center, the Trauma One facility in town.
Officers did see that Samar had been involved in some type of altercation. There was blood on her clothes. She had duct tape in her hair.
She was then removed from the crime scene and taken to the Deerwood clubhouse. She was certainly emotionally wrought. She was concerned about her husband.
I remember when I received a call that a horrible incident has taken place and Saad is severely injured and he is being taken to the university hospital, and everybody was just shocked because I cannot imagine that anybody will have any animosity against a person like Saad.
It had been 17 years since Saad first left his home country of Syria for America in 1982.
The family was very educated. He had a brother who lived in Boston and he was professional. His other brother was a physician and he himself came as a student to do his bachelor degree in computer sciences at Florida Atlantic University, FAU, in Boca Raton. Initially, he worked in some kind of tech company in Hollywood area there close to Miami. That's where Summer, his wife, came and joined him from Syria, and they got married in Hollywood, South Florida.
Saad and Summer relocated from South Florida to Jacksonville in 1986 for a better opportunity.
At that time, the computer job was not that prevalent or not that good paying. So that's where they moved down to Jacksonville and purchased a convenience store. And then he put all of his efforts to become a very successful small business owner.
His business became very successful. They were making a lot of money with this particular business.
I knew Saad and Summer from the very beginning of my migration to Jacksonville. the president of Islamic Center of Northeast Florida. He invited me for dinner, and that's where I came across them. They became just like my family and friends. And he was regular for our congregational prayers, and he was very kind person, always smiling. And the next year in 1987, they had their daughter Layla. They lived in Deerwood, which was gated community, very affluent community.
Deerwood has a gorgeous golf course, swimming pool, tennis courts, club. It's a really nice area.
Saad was very close to his mother and his brother. So after a lot of communication between the family, the mother and the brother decided to move to Jacksonville to live closer to Saad. I mean, the way I look at Saad is that typical success story who came as an immigrant, who worked through different stages to become successful businessman, and who focused upon his business and upon his family and upon serving the community. So it was the shock of my life seeing somebody who is so kind, so caring, and such a person full of life being stabbed at his own home.
Within an hour of the 911 call, authorities received word that Saad Kawaf has succumbed to his injuries.
I remember rushing to the university hospital, and there I found almost everybody from the Muslim community or the Syrian community. It is horrible, it is unbearable. So the first question came to our mind is, who could have done it?
Homicide investigators soon arrive at the Kawaf residence.
Along with a significant amount of blood on the floor of the garage. There was blood splatter or transfer on the wall and then on the car, the Camry itself, which was indicative of a very violent fight and stabbing. In 1999, DNA was at its infancy at its time, so detectives are looking to gather any type of evidence from the garage and inside the house.
You have blood spatter in places. You have some blood droplets on the kitchen cabinet.
There was blood on the kitchen counter, and I believe by the sink as well.
You've got blood everywhere. So it's incumbent upon the police to collect blood samples.
Inside a kitchen cabinet, investigators also find evidence to corroborate Summer Kawaf's story of the attack.
There were some bags where the money apparently was. In fact, one of the evidence photos shows a stack of bills in a bag, like maybe somebody missed that when they were scarfing up the rest of it.
So this confirmed that this was more than likely a home invasion robbery.
They didn't know if there was some random person that was going to various homes in that particular area. So they were on high alert.
Coming up, investigators uncover red flags in Saad Kawaf's life.
The victim was the subject of a federal and state investigation.
The assailants had inside information that the victim carried large amounts of money home.
This is a whole nother ballgame now.
And as the mystery deepens, the long road to justice leads to an unlikely pair.
You can't dispute the DNA. They match.
Just a few hours into the investigation of 39-year-old Saad Kawaf's murder, investigators in Jacksonville have little doubt about the killer's motive.
It was a robbery/homicide type incident. You had one victim that was deceased there, as well as a survivor, the wife of the deceased.
Now we need to figure out who possibly could have done this. Samara was distraught at what just occurred. The detectives start to interview her at the Deerwood Country Club. They ask her to start at the beginning of their day. She said they woke up like any other morning that day.
He was going to pick up his mother to take the mother to a doctor's appointment. Samara had just bid goodbye to her husband. She heard commotion in the garage.
It sounded like her husband was yelling.
She went out there and she saw a male suspect having a major scuffle with her husband, stabbing him.
There was a white female in the garage as well that immediately approached her and demanded money from her. She did not recognize these people, had never seen them before.
She immediately got into a struggle, and they then fell to the ground and struggled from the ground.
She fought off her attacker, and during her fighting off the attacker, she bit her assailant. She left a significant bite mark on her left arm.
The female assailant took Mrs. Quaff inside the home to look for money.
And then in comes the male suspect holding a knife to her throat. And he demands money. He says, I know you got it here.
The assailants kept asking for the deposits. They had inside information that Mr. Quaff carried large amounts of money home.
Mr. Quaff's business did a lot of work in lottery deposits and food stamps, and so he was holding on to large sums of money at a time.
So is there a co-worker at his convenience store that for some whatever reason would want to do this?
According to Summer, her husband had brought home more than $50,000 the previous night to keep safe until the bank opened on Monday morning.
And at that point, Mrs. Quaff told them where a large sum of money in a paper bag was hidden in one of the kitchen cabinets.
After Mrs. Quaff points it to them, she is then tied up in duct tape. Her mouth is sealed with duct tape. She is secured to a chair, and the male and female suspect leave.
Once the suspects left, she was able to get out of the duct tape and contacted 911 at that point. Her husband was still alive in the garage.
And his only words are, I'm dying, call police.
The female was described as being a white female, short blonde hair, well-dressed, and wearing a hat.
She didn't have much to say to describe the male assailant. He was a male, a white male.
She was not able to see how the suspects left the house, so there was no vehicle description at that time from her.
After they speak with Summer, investigators canvass the neighborhood.
We were looking for potential witnesses to the crime. And eventually detectives were able to speak to a resident in that neighborhood who routinely walks her dog. And right around the time this was occurring, she had noticed that there was a red Jeep Cherokee in that driveway.
It passed her, but she was not able to identify either of the occupants.
This is a gated community. It is a very affluent area, so everyone comes in has to register or be checked out.
They went to the guard service in the attempts of getting descriptions of all individuals that came in. There was no red Jeep on the logs whatsoever. So they may have thought, well, the lady was mistaken.
Investigators ask Saad's friends and family if any of his employees had a vendetta against the Quaffs.
His store was on Beach Boulevard in an area which was not very affluent.
The person that committed this crime knew the routine, knew that there was large deposits, knew that Mr. Quaff carried those home with him.
Usually the money which the store does over the weekend, the bank is closed, so it is his habit that he will deposit it on Monday morning.
This is 1999. Cash is still pretty prevalent. ATM cards probably not that much. And this is a busy store in a busy, long-established neighborhood. Cash was probably king.
An employee might have known that Mr. Quaff had this much money in his home. So they did go to the store.
They interviewed each of the employees individually to determine their relationship with the victim. Was there anything that would either lead to believe that one of those workers is a potential suspect?
They checked their background, they checked their whereabouts, but all the employees had ironclad alibis, and none of them had done anything to raise suspicions of being involved in this homicide.
As investigators search for other potential leads, they discover a separate case tied to Saad's business dealings.
They learned that the victim was the subject of a federal and state investigation involving a potential money laundering scheme. This is a whole nother ballgame now. We potentially could have organized crime involved here, which opens up your possibilities exponentially of what could have occurred.
Is he selling drugs? Is he getting money for something else that he's not supposed to be doing?
So as a detective, this quickly goes from being, is it a small group of individuals that knew what his daily routine was, to now the sky's the limit. Are there drug cartels involved?
Less than 6 hours after the murder of Saad Kawaf, investigators with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office have discovered he was the subject of a multi-jurisdiction investigation.
In the United States, if you make a bank deposit, $10,000 or more, it gets reported to the federal government. The victim was making cash deposits to his bank twice a week that were under the $10,000 mark.
It's going to throw a red flag if you're constantly making cash deposits on a regular basis under $10,000. It's going to get their attention, and it did. It raises the eyebrows of the government as how are you making the money? Is your business a front? Are you doing something illegal and you're bringing in a lot of cash that you're not reporting?
And so he was reported by his bank to the authorities, and the matter was assigned to a task force.
2 days after his murder, a judge signs off on a search warrant for Saad Kawaf's home.
Detectives conducted a search warrant at his home. They found nothing. They found no drugs. They found nothing that would relate him to any type of money laundering.
It could have been simply a matter of trying to avoid paying taxes, but there might have been another reason for it.
It's very likely that deposits were made to the bank under that $10,000 mark on a regular basis, and that the remainder of the cash was kept at home to have that cash readily accessible.
With his store being where it was located in a low-income area, he has to have that cash because people are bringing checks there to cash them, and he would cash those checks for them. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to service the people in that particular area. They excluded the fact that he was involved in any kind of illegal activity, any type of money laundering.
Back at square one, investigators turn back to Saad's wife for help.
Unfortunately, in this case, there was no video evidence, nothing that would assist law enforcement in determining what the suspects looked like. Other than Samar's description, she was able to come up with a sketched image of what the female suspect possibly looked like.
So detectives provide to the community and the media a composite sketch of the female that was involved in this case, asking for anybody with any information as to who this may be.
The victim's family and friends provided a check for a $100,000 reward for any leads that would result in an arrest of the suspect.
The community was willing to do anything to find the culprit. I mean, the community was so much devastated. We would have done whatever, so 100,000 and even more than that would have not been an issue.
You have to understand, every call that comes in, they've got to follow up because there may be something in one of those calls that will lead them to the assailant.
For more than 2 months, investigators look into every tip they receive.
Some of them are just bogus calls, people trying to take a chance on giving information so that they can get $100,000 in reward.
That unfortunately, none of the leads that they were provided were of any value.
Investigators catch a small break when they receive the results from the crime lab on the evidence collected at the scene.
During the original processing of the scene, crime scene detectives were able to get blood samples from the victim's home that resulted in a foreign DNA hit.
Also, there was blood found on Mr. Kawaf's shirt collar, which was identified as being blood that wasn't his blood. So obviously it was believed that that blood was from the male assailant.
Unfortunately, the technology just wasn't available at that time to identify who they were. After several months, the case goes into suspension. So the last thing any detective wants to do is suspend a case, but we've turned over every stone. We've submitted every piece of evidence that we have, and now it's kind of a sit and wait and hope and pray.
It really became very frustrating and disappointing. What is taking so long?
"19 long years go by before the advent of familial DNA brings new hope in identifying the killers.
On their anniversaries, cold cases are reviewed to see if there are any solvability factors where it could be reassigned to the cold case unit. Fast forward, now you have all these private DNA companies that have these huge databases where you can submit your DNA and it'll tell you, you know, where you came from and what your genealogy is. That has been a huge, huge resource and tool.
In 2018, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement received a grant where they could start sending DNA samples off to private labs. Ultimately, in 2020, they had the DNA evidence resubmitted from the crime scene of 1999, sent to a private lab.
When the blood samples were tested in the lab, it produced a list of individuals that it could have matched to.
These are potential candidates. It's not, this is definitely the person that did it, but here's a list of individuals that this DNA would potentially be connected to. So they have the DNA profiles they were excluding, and now they come to William Bear, or Billy Bear.
They figured out, oh my gosh, this man used to be a Jacksonville police detective.
In 2020, more than 20 years after the murder of Saad Kawaf, Jacksonville police have traced DNA found at the crime scene to an unlikely suspect.
Billy Bear, he had been with the sheriff's office for a very long time. He came in, I believe, in 1975.
Bear retired in 2002. He had a personnel record that was full of commendations. One of those recommendations was he saved the life of a child.
After they made the positive match on Billy Bear, they began to try to figure out who was the female assailant. And so the obvious thing was to figure out who was Bear associated with back in 1999. They did checks, found out that he was married to Melissa Schaefer at that time.
If you look at the original police report, you'll see the description is of a thin, blonde-haired woman. So easy enough to run through databases, driver's license, that Melissa Jo Schaefer is a blonde-haired, thin woman.
Melissa was born and raised in Cedar Rapids. She had been very athletic and played a lot of sports while she was there. She had received a softball scholarship and then had to drop out of college because she got pregnant with her first daughter. She had two daughters, both with the same guy, and they got married.
Unfortunately, Melissa's first marriage ended in divorce.
With Melissa, she could flip from very good and very stable to pretty mean and nasty really fast. Just say mean, terrible things.
In 1995, Melissa moved with her two young daughters to Jacksonville, where she met Billy Bear.
She was out at the beach over a long weekend, and Billy Bear introduced himself as a police officer, and they started seeing each other. They both liked sports. He would come over and watch football games at the house, and eventually developed a romantic relationship.
Within the year, Billy and Melissa were married.
Bear helped put her on her feet, and everything was great. She definitely appreciated his authority and the security she felt by dating a cop.
Billy remained a respected officer with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, which led to an opportunity in 1999.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Intelligence Division, where Detective William Bear worked, was working on a task force with Florida Department of Law Enforcement and FBI, and they were looking into possible money laundering that was occurring at Said Kawaf's store.
William Bear was responsible for following Mr. Kawaf, placing him under surveillance to see if he could tie in anything illegal that Mr. Kawaf was doing. He knew his whereabouts. He knew when he rose. He knew when he would go to sleep. He knew that he carried large sums of cash home to prepare for deposit. There's the connection. There's your opportunity.
Five months after the murder, the homicide detectives hold an update meeting with that task force of FBI, FDLE, and JSO intelligence, and Billy Bear was part of that. He sat in that update meeting with homicide detectives.
The fact that he was involved in the initial investigation with FDLE and the FBI, it was determined that they needed to get confirmation DNA to, without a doubt, determine that he was, in fact, the DNA profile that was on the victim's collar.
They had to make sure that this was the right guy, and at that point, you got to get some fresh DNA to match.
So they did what's called a trash pull.
The trash pull is exactly what it sounds. Once you place your trash on the curb, it now is abandoned property. And they will obtain that trash and attempt to get DNA off any material in that bag.
Inside the trash, authorities are able to obtain Billy Bear's DNA from empty bottles and cans.
Suddenly, the match is irrevocably made. You can't dispute the DNA from 1999. They match. It's him.
On July 1st, 2020, Billy Bear is picked up and brought to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for questioning.
I'm Detective Radigan. Your name's come up in an investigation of mine. I'd like to ask you a few questions about it.
Skip all the formalities, because I don't know what's going on. You need to tell me what's going on. I know what my rights are, so...
I'm just going to cut right to the chase. You know this gentleman right here?
Sure, son.
Never saw him before?
Lisa, I don't remember anybody.
Well, this is Mr. Kawaf, who was murdered back in May 17th, 1999.
Okay.
You were on the money laundering task force at the time, who Mr. Kawaf was being investigated on.
I don't remember.
He lives in Deerwood.
I don't remember.
No, you don't remember?
Any of that. Obviously, you're accusing me of something. You got me under arrest.
I am.
I think I need a lawyer.
I think that's pretty obvious.
Coming up, details about Saad Kawaf's murder are finally revealed to law enforcement.
She had been holding this inside her for years, and it was finally a relief to get this off her chest.
The best I can ever tell them is I'm sorry.
21 years after the murder of Saad Kawaf, Jacksonville authorities have taken retired police officer Billy Bear into custody for the crime. Based on Summer Kawaf's description, investigators believe Billy's ex-wife Melissa Schaefer is likely his female accomplice.
Detectives find out that Melissa Jo Schaefer is no longer married and is now living in Missouri.
So cold case detectives coordinated with the Jefferson City Police. A traffic stop was conducted and she was brought to the police station where she was interviewed.
So kind of going down memory lane a little bit, anything jarring you why we would be talking to you from Jacksonville still?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
She immediately knew why they were there and stated that she'd been holding this inside her for years and couldn't tell anybody, and that it was finally a relief to get this off her chest.
Tell me how all this transpired and we got to that day in May of 1999.
He needed money?
She said Billy Bear at some point had been shot in the line of duty. And during his surgery for that, they discovered he had cancer. And apparently that set him back significantly financially.
Whatever he was doing in the intelligence division, they had been running I don't know if this guy ran a convenience store or a gas station or what he did. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And it had everything to do with how many deposits this guy was making, and he was always making them under what would get caught by the government.
Yeah.
He had it in his head that they've got to have all this extra money in their house. If we went there, that he would be able to get the money and everything would be okay.
She said he basically lied about Mr. Kawaf, said Mr. Kawaf was involved in drugs, that if they robbed Mr. Kawaf of the money, Mr. Kawaf never would report the crime. Bear had convinced her that this would be okay. We're just robbing somebody who's a criminal.
Melissa tells investigators that on the morning of May 17, 1999, the couple drove to Saad Kawaf's home.
Bear knew that they would be able to enter the gated community if they said they were realtors. He had gone as far to have business cards made indicating that they were realtors. They drove their red Jeep Cherokee from their house that morning, entered Deerwood, went directly to the victim's house.
They both got out of the car, approached the garage, and Mr. Kawaf was coming out of the garage.
Well, I think the gentleman knew that something was wrong.
Okay.
That something wasn't right. And then all I know is that they started fighting. And the next thing I know, his wife came out from the house into the garage. And I started wrestling around with her.
She claims the wife immediately started defending herself and actually bit her.
When did she bite you?
It used to be a half a moon.
That's not the scar from it?
It's just the scar.
Remember asking her for money?
Yes. That's what he told me to do. I go in, and of course that lady is scared to death, which I would be too. Said she didn't know what I was talking about.
William Bear comes in with a knife, puts it to her throat, threatens to kill her.
He started yelling at her and said, "You know what we're talking about?" She went over to the cabinet in the kitchen and pulled out a whole bunch of money and gave it to her.
Bear went over and rinsed his blood off of his arms. They then duct taped Mrs. Kawaf to a chair in the kitchen and left out the way they came in, back through the garage.
So what happens after that?
Minus me just crying all the way home. I was told where to put the money in our house. He showered and went to work.
At that point, their relationship was seriously changed. She was just petrified and dumbfounded by what happened and how foolish she had been to be involved in this. They eventually bought a home, but basically it was like two families living in the same home. Their marriage was shot.
She stated she eventually worked up the courage to get divorced and then left Jacksonville and moved back up to Missouri to assist with her family.
Legally, she's responsible and equally responsible for the crime. She's a co-defendant, participated in a robbery. The robbery went bad and someone was killed.
There was really just no excuse that she could provide as to why she went along with this, and then kept quiet for all these years.
I can't give that woman her husband back. I can't give that daughter her dad back. The best I can ever tell them is I'm sorry. Yeah. And I don't expect your forgiveness.
Following her confession, Melissa Schaefer is extradited to Florida.
Bear was indicted for first-degree murder, which in Florida, at the time of the offense, would have allowed for the death penalty. Schaefer was charged with second-degree murder, which has a more flexible sentencing range.
This was a pre-planned, premeditated robbery because you had the facts as an intelligence detective that this person had money from his business and you were going to take it.
With such kind of horrible situation, it's not a matter of voice, it's a matter of conscience. So these were both conscienceless people.
1 years, Billy Bear and his ex-wife, Melissa Jo Schaefer, have been charged in the 1999 murder of 39-year-old business owner Saad Kawaf. Rather than face a life sentence, Melissa agrees to testify against her ex-husband.
Since Bear had not confessed, Mrs. Schaefer's testimony would be helpful in the prosecution of Bear, and she was willing to do it.
On December 18, 2020, Melissa pleads guilty to second-degree murder.
She cooperated fully. She sat down with our state attorney and gave a full explanation of what had occurred. She provided a deposition testimony to Bear's lawyer. I think that Mrs. Schaefer's testimony pushed Bear to realize that this was a hopeless case for him, so he eventually worked out a plea agreement.
In 2021, Billy Bear pleads guilty to avoid the death penalty and is sentenced to life without parole, while Melissa Schaefer is sentenced to 30 years in prison.
Her attorney wanted 25, the judge gave her 30. I think it's appropriate. It shows complicity. It shows a willingness in the moment to be part of this scheme to rob, and then this willingness to hide the homicide.
Anybody that knows her, they can't believe that this young gal who is honest, intelligent, a leader, good person, could have ever been brought into something this horrible. I think that she was just particularly susceptible to a pressure that Bear put on her to be involved in this.
I think it's pretty clear she had every opportunity not to do it. Do I think he pressured her? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it was her choice either to go or not go. And she chose to go.
Melissa Schaefer's never been anybody's victim. She's very aggressive, and in the same way that she could flip that switch and be this angry person, she can flip it right back the other way and come across as soft-spoken, caring. If she went over there that day with Bear and they murdered this man, she went willingly. She went because of what was in it for her. She was an angry, selfish person.
I am glad that justice has been served, even though it will not bring that father or that brother or that kind human being back. But at least right now, the closure is that we know what happened.
To realize that William Bear, after the murder, was sitting with his task force of federal and state agents, listening to an update on the homicide that he committed being discussed, that is just amazing to me.
The fact that he's retired law enforcement leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's beyond disappointing when you learn that one of your own is capable of doing something like this. He needed her help, and she didn't want to disappoint. So for this particular event, you know, I would say they would have been the perfect match.
It's sad for the Kawaf family that's happened to him. Mr. Kawaf came to America for a better life for himself as well as his family. He moved into an affluent neighborhood, a gated community where he felt safe, and they just wanted to live a peaceful life, being successful, and that dream fell short.
Saad was a family man, he was a generous man, he was very pious, righteous, smiling, very social, very friendly, very caring, a person who was kind